Thank you for coming to Medicine Singing. It's an honor to be with you. And you've come to this particular portion, which is how we relate. How we relate when dealing with change. How we relate to change. Many of my colleagues on other websites are immensely helpful in giving many ways to manage stress and change. From yoga to nutrition, meditation. Here in Medicine Singing, though, we are focusing on how to relate to change, how to engage in a relationship when you're facing change. In other portions of Medicine Singing, we have focused on the past, the present, and the future when it comes to exploring our dreams, finding our dreams, following our dreams. We've also talked about the importance of heroes, helpers, and healers in our lives, the impact that they've had and how they are allies for us, how they can be champions for us as we take the steps along the path to fulfilling our dreams, which is where the latitude of our gratitude and the longitude of our longings come together, that powerful creative center of the world universe, when we tap into the source of life itself. How to relate when dealing with change is a powerful topic here at Medicine Singing. We have found that on the path towards fulfilling our dreams, in relationship to how we relate to change, there are 7 sacred steps. So let's spend some time with these 7 sacred steps. It will give you great guidance and encouragement on how to relate when dealing with change. Number 1 of the 7 steps is drain the brain. Drain the brain of judgment. Set it aside. Number 2, set aside. Set aside assumptions. Set them aside. Inhale, exhale, give them their release. Number 3, bring our very best. Bring our very best to each and every one of our guests. Number 4, no one better than. No one less than. No one better than. No one less than. Step number 4. Step number 5. Develop dialogue. Ditch dogma. Number 5. Develop dialogue and ditch dogma. Number 6. 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. 2 eyes, watch. 2 ears, listen. 1 mouth, minimize. 1 mouth, minimize. Step number 6. And step number 7, when we have been faithful to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, we come to step number 7, where we find the heart. 1 heart, 1 hearth, at the heart of the world universe, where we are all related. Step number 7, 1 heart, and the hospitality of being at the hearth of the heart of the world universe, and our own, and one another's. 7 sacred steps, how to relate when dealing with change. Let's spend some time together with each of these 7 steps. Step number 1, drain the brain of judgment. You'll remember from other parts of medicine singing that between stimulus and response, there is a moment, an arc, where everything can change. Draining the brain of judgment occurs when the stimulus presents itself and we drain the brain of judgment in order that we can see with new eyes whatever it is that is occurring around us as we're dealing with change. We also come to understand that between that stimulus and response, in that space in between where spirit resides, and our choices are hundreds of thousands, we can change what we believe. If we can change what we believe, we will impact what we perceive. And not only that, we will impact what we receive. So at that moment, between stimulus and response, that place where spirit resides, that place where we can update our beliefs, change our beliefs, develop new and empowering beliefs, tap into ancient beliefs. We also want to drain the brain of judgment. At that moment too, we can be mindful. And the reason for that is between stimulus and response, we inhale, exhale, draining the brain of judgment, and now we are fully present. From the other work you've done with medicine singing, we've worked hard at being rigorously honest about the past, about where we are now, and what our dreams are, and naming our dreams and aiming for our dreams. But in this moment, between stimulus and response, when we breathe, when we drain the brain of judgment, we are fully present in the now, in the here and now, at the center place of creation. In addition, when we drain the brain of judgment, we bump into something quite often. And that is, we often find in ourselves that we have trouble draining the brain of judgment. Some of those judgments are very, very strong. Some of them have been passed down to us for generations in families and nations and tribes. So we're kind to one another at this point, and we set the goal to become rigidly flexible as your first step. You can't usually jump from inflexible to flexible, so we'll start with learning to be rigidly flexible. And in that pliable moment, all the possibilities will exist for your life. That was step number 1, drain the brain of judgment. Step number 2, set aside. Step number 2, set aside assumptions. We all like to manage change as best we can, often by trying to control it. You remember how here in Medicine Singing we've spoken to the issue of how we make ourselves sick by not asking for help, by trying to control everything, by not forgiving. All those are based on assumptions. So here we want to set aside assumptions. We want to let go of some of that control. We think that by controlling, by contracting, by digging in, we are going to minimize the change effect in our lives. When in fact, when we do that, we don't make ourselves particularly well, nor are we of help to our communities and our families. We want to manage the anxiety because in facing change, when we relate from that old primal place, we generally relate from fear. If that fear is appropriate, use it wisely. There is nothing wrong or dishonorable about that. If fear is not necessary, and you have assumptions attached to it, step number 2, set aside assumptions. And we acknowledge that this is taking a risk. You are risking setting aside assumptions. It's what you're used to. It's what we've counted on to make things somewhat predictable. And yet that is constriction in our lives. And so here it takes courage to set aside assumptions, because in addition to that, the majority of time shows that assumptions are ego-based. It is what we want, it is based on what we fear, and it is based on what we do not want. And that is also an attempt of control. So to set aside assumptions will bring us again to that creative source of the universe as we set aside assumptions. Step number 3, we bring our best to each and every guest, each person we meet along the way. We bring our best. Masters, teachers, philosophers, great men and women all, through the centuries have taught us this, that when we treat one another with respect, more dreams than not will come true. And not only will more dreams come true, but this is an essential part of the spiritual path of meaning and purpose and following your dreams. As we are all related and everything is connected, we greet each guest with respect and honor, whether that's a two-legged, a four-legged, of any nation in creation, from minerals to plants, to the sky and the sea and the land. We greet and give our best to this guest, which is an honorable thing. As a child, I would read a little book called When Jesus Comes to My House, and it had pictures of when Jesus would come to my house, what that would be like, someone important coming, someone that I cared about or didn't know, but someone came to my house. And I go around the house, cleaning the house and preparing it for my guest. So I go to the door, and what if Jesus comes to my house? What if Alice or Gary comes to my house? What if Muhammad comes to my house? I will do what I need to do, and I'm learning to do the best for my guests. I could name other well-known or famous people in history. What if someone comes to my house and there's someone I don't like, someone I've made an assumption about, someone of a particular race or educational status, social status, economic status, tribe or community that I have made judgments about? I inhale and I exhale those, draining the brain of judgment and setting aside assumptions in order that I can bring my best to you or anyone as my guest. Let me ask you this. If we came to your house, would we be welcomed as your guest? On the inhale and exhale, we bring to our guests our very best. As we relate to dealing with change, we come to step number 4. No one better than, no one less than. We are all related. And so when we engage in relating to change and one another, step number 4 is no one better than, no one less than. We are all related. We are family. Two-leggeds, four-leggeds, all of nature, the earth, the sea, and the skies, all nations. And you can begin to feel the magnitude and the immensity of the universe and our impact as we approach it with these sacred steps. Step number 5, develop dialogue and ditch dogma. Now, many of us are familiar with dogma because we may hold a lot of it as cherished and near to our hearts. or embedded in our minds, which is closer to the truth. We want to develop this dialogue with the universe and with others that come into our lives, give our best to our guests, and how we interact and engage in the process of change. Dialogue will require us to drain the brain of judgment, to set aside assumptions, to give our very best to our guests, and in that process comes dialogue where we listen to learn and understand and to be understood. We ditch the dogma because in the development of dialogue, dogma interferes. We listen instead from the point of view of debate, where we're looking to take what the person has just said and share our opinion and belief in dogma and why they may be right or wrong. And now we're off on dogma. So here we are. Develop dialogue and ditch the dogma. In how to relate in dealing with change, we arrive at step number 6. 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. 2 eyes to watch, to see, to receive. 2 ears to listen, to hear, to come to understand, to expand our consciousness. And 1 mouth to minimize. All wise elders show the characteristic of their character when they speak slowly, if at all, when they have something important to say. And when they greet others, they rarely engage in an immediate conversation because they're watching and listening and minimizing speaking, because so much is present in that moment in engaging in that relationship, draining the brain of judgment and setting aside assumptions. We're working hard at this and giving the best to our guests. 2 eyes to see, 2 ears to hear, and 1 mouth to minimize as we engage, eventually then, after the silence, into dialogue. Step number 7 is unique unto itself because it's really a place where we arrive and we stand still. Step number 7, 1 heart. We've worked hard to get there, draining the brain of judgment, setting aside assumptions. That's quite a task in and of itself. Greeting each person or part of creation as a guest to whom we bring our very best. Engaging in watching, in listening, in minimizing speaking. Understanding that we're all related, engaging in that relationship with all of creation in the world universe and with one another and ourselves, we now find the greatest gift, 1 heart in the universe. And you and I have arrived at the hearth of the heart of the universe. Welcome.